Hey everybody, and welcome to Vinyl Obsession, the podcast. We're at the Record Parlor in Los Angeles, California with Foo Fighters guitarist Chris Shiflett. Chris just finished picking out his top 5 albums, and we're going to take a deep dive into his picks on Vinyl Obsession, the podcast. Hey guys, and welcome to Vinyl Obsession, the podcast. I'm the host, Eric Young, and this is Chris Shiflett. Chris Shiflett joined the Foo Fighters as their lead guitarist in 1999 and also has a country band called Chris Shiflett and the Dead Peasants. He has 3 solo albums under his belt and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2021. I'm sitting off to the side listening to you flip through the vinyl and talk about music, and it's super cool, completely different take. A lot of people that we've had in, and is listening to you, things that you remember from your childhood, albums that inspired you, albums you remember listening to when you're young. It was really cool. How was it for you flipping through the vinyl today?
It was super fun, man. I get lost in record stores.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Now, part of it for you, is it that it's like, I always say, it's kind of like a time machine, right? It can transform you back to that spot in time, right?
Yeah.
First time you saw an album, first time you heard an album.
Oh, yeah.
The art, the cover art or something like that, was that ever draw you in?
Oh, absolutely. For bands that you didn't know their music, it was all based on the album cover. It was all based on how they look. Until MTV came along and it changed it a little bit, but more often than that, you didn't really know what your favorite bands even looked like,
right,
half the time, or what they looked like when they were playing, or you would have like one photo on an album that you based like everything you thought about style on that one photo that was just this moment for whatever the band was.
Right.
I'm gonna tie my scarf that way forever,
Forever. No matter what happens, I'm tying it this way.
That's what Hanoi Rocks did. That's what I'm gonna do too. But before that, all my earliest memories are just flipping through my older brother Mike's record collection.
Yep.
And I have like just kind of burned into my brain, like just staring at Hard Day's Night.
Yep.
Just staring at Hot Rocks.
Yep.
Jailhouse Rock by Elvis,
Yep.
was another one. Those records were just like, I don't know, it was like maybe the way other kids were with comic books or something. That was like vinyl for
that
me.
image is in front of you, but you can see it in your mind's eye, clear as day.
100%.
Clear as day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, man, let's get into the top 5. No particular order. We'll pull them out of the bag. Just go through it and talk about it. Vinyl number 1.
Merl Haggard.
Yeah.
I love Merl Haggard's music. I'm a big fan of country music. And Merl was one of the first classic country artists that I got into, because we talked about it a little bit. I kind of got into country music through like what you would call like alt country or Americana.
Yep.
And a lot of those bands in that 90s wave of that, I think, were not necessarily people that sort of came through country music. Maybe they're more like rock and roll people, punk rock people that kind of found their way to it.
Yep.
And this kind of thing was different, like alt country to me always sounded like the Stones as much as it sounded like, there'd be like a steel guitar, but really it was closer to rock and roll to my ear, you know what I mean? But this kind of stuff was like
another world.
Yeah, another world and the real deal, and something that like really turned me on to country songwriting, man, and really sent me down that road of just kind of obsessing on it.
I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee, place where even squares can have a ball.
And Merl Haggard, icon, right? I think most people wouldn't know. I didn't know until a couple years ago. He's a California guy.
Oh yeah,
right?
Born and raised in Bakersfield, Oildale.
Yeah. Which and now is that something why you're connected to him? It's like a geographical connection. Like you're from
Absolutely.
here, and like you said out there, he's singing songs about California.
He's singing songs about California. I'm trying to see if there's any on this record. But yeah, that was like a lyrical theme in a lot of his work, and so you sort of like, even though, like I said before, like that wasn't my life.
Yep.
I didn't live in Bakersfield. I lived not too close to Bakersfield, but like he's talking about stuff that connects culturally to what you know.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that always draws you in with music.
Yeah.
I gotta say also, I had the pleasure of interviewing him not too long before he passed away, and he was the greatest.
Yeah.
So cool.
That's better for you, right?
Yeah.
That now you have another connection to him and his music.
Yeah.
Cool. Vinyl number 2.
Elvis. I'm not gonna pretend that this is one of my favorite records. I've actually never seen this record before. but I know all these songs, and I'm a huge Elvis fan. You know, like I was saying, my brother had Jailhouse Rock when I was a little kid.
Yep.
So that just kind of made, you know, to me, Elvis was just always cool.
Yeah, and I mean, he was like his above music almost, right? Like when he hit his pinnacle, there was like music, and then Elvis was like in this other.
Oh yeah,
category.
I mean, he's the king of rock and roll,
right?
And you know, he's so great that, like, you know, it's funny because maybe not when he started, but eventually, like with the Beatles and Stones and bands like that, it became so wrapped up in rock music that part of your sort of artistic worth was that you wrote those songs. You know what I mean? And Elvis was such a great singer and such a revolutionary that he didn't write any of these songs, and he's still considered the king.
Right. It still felt like him.
Right.
Gospel, country feel, all of it.
Oh, he put his mark on everything for sure. But I tell you, I mean, I love Elvis's music, but I also always think about, because I was born in Santa Barbara, and then we bounced around between Santa Barbara and Maryland because my dad was working out there when I was real young, and then we moved back permanently in the summer of '77. And I'll never forget, it was the day, I think, I have to check with my brother, it was the day after Elvis died. And I'll never forget being a really little kid and seeing like our neighbors like out on their lawns crying.
Talking and
that Elvis had died. Yeah. So
Pandemonium has broken out here on Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis. Thousands of fans from all over the country are converging on Graceland, trying to get in to view the body of the 42-year-old king of rock and roll.
You just don't have that kind of like impact,
right,
culturally, anymore.
Yeah, and crazy to hear things like, you know, I'm learning a ton about him through the movies and stuff, like everybody is, and that he never toured worldwide. He was this worldwide. I've been through Graceland 2 or 3 times, and it's insane. Yeah, right. It's just like when you're in there and you're seeing all the memorabilia, platinum records, and you can fully understand that this guy he wasn't a person, like he was this thing. Oh yeah, this like mythical creature almost.
How cool do those guys look?
I will hang out with them right now.
100%. Yeah. And their presentation, the whole thing, they were like this like rockabilly through a crazy lens, crazy filter.
This is Final Obsession, the podcast, and we're back with Foo Fighters guitarist Chris Shiflett.
All right, what else we got in the bag?
Final number 3.
Ooh, Stray Cats. Come on.
Yeah.
You love it.
Influential for you?
Extremely. Yeah. Extremely. Brian Setzer is one of my favorite. He's like top 3 favorite guitar players for me. I love Brian Setzer's guitar playing. But they were just the whole thing. I mean, how cool do those guys look?
I will hang out with them right now.
100%. Yeah. And their presentation, the whole thing, they were like this like rockabilly through the through a crazy lens, crazy filter. It wasn't like, if you listen to this record and you listen to actual like Eddie Cochran and Gene Vincent records and Johnny Burnett and all that stuff, it doesn't sound the same. Yeah. But they took it and revved it up and made it like, you know, it's injected some punk rock into it. Made it, you know, the template for everything that came after it. But
now, when you're listening to albums as a guitar player, is that something you hear first? Is that what draws you? Like guitar playing?
Oftentimes, yeah. And certainly when I was a kid, you know, I was a kid in the Guitar Hero era. Yep. So that was like, you know, it was always about the guitar player in whatever band for you know, it's funny, like we're talking about like having older brothers and stuff. Like that's like so many of your opinions about music and just life in general, you just come from your parents or your brothers. Sure. They thought it, so you're like, you're gonna fight, you know, tooth and nail for it. And so, yeah, I mean, that was the way, it seemed like that's how everybody was, you know, that was around our world at that point. So
that's how you were exposed to things. There was no internet. There was no Spotify or anything like that. So that's how you learned.
And we were like really guitar centric, and Brian Setzer is so good, but was so good when this record came out that, like I said, heavy metal people loved these, you know, or at least appreciated and respected him, you know,
because of the sound.
Because he was so good. And you know, this is a combination of their first 2 records, right? They took the 2 that they had released in the UK and took like half from this and half from that and stuck them together with one new song.
To expose people from it here.
Yeah, and then they got real big here, and so those 2 UK releases were these mythical records when I was a teenager.
Okay. You're searching for them.
Searching for in every record store, never found.
Never.
And, well, I mean, I have them now.
Right.
But I think I bought them off the internet, but I don't think I ever saw them. In I remember like one person I knew in Santa Barbara had those records.
But every record store you went in, that was the mission.
That was always the mission.
I will find the stray cats or I'll die.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I do remember him listening to a lot of Bob Marley and a lot of Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
And then later on in life, coming to realize like, whoa, my dad actually had really good taste in
taste.
music, you know?
Yeah. Welcome back to Vinyl Obsession, the podcast. Today we have musician Chris Shiflett talking about his top 5 vinyl. All right, next one. Vinyl number 4.
Oh yeah, The Replacements, Let It Be. Fantastic. The first record by The Replacements that I ever heard was this record. Yeah, awesome. My buddy Pat Gherkin had a cassette tape of this, and Pat, I'm sorry to say I stole your cassette. I don't know which camera I'm supposed to look into. It was me. I stole your cassette of this record because I loved it so much.
Is that your like introduction into kind of the punk rock world?
Well, I would say this was more like college rock, you know, like before, in the 80s, I don't know if anybody called anything indie rock. I don't know if that was considered a genre, but everything like The Replacements and Husker Du and bands like that, and REM and all those bands were college rock, you know. And we, growing up in Santa Barbara, we had UCSB, and around UCSB were a bunch of record stores. And I have vivid memories of seeing like Pleased to Meet Me and this record, like in the, end capped or whatever at Morning Glory Records or one of those spots.
I need a goddamn job. I need a goddamn job. I really need a goddamn job. I need a goddamn job.
So yeah, I thought of it as like, college rock, or what you would think of as like alternative music before people were calling it alternative music.
Right.
But God, this record is so good. 16 Blue, Answering Machine, Favorite Thing, Androgynous. I mean, it's just great song after great song after great song.
Now, that album obviously is one of your favorites. Would Replacements be in like a top 5 band for you?
Yeah, I don't know. They'd be up there for sure. Yeah, definitely. And again, one of those bands that like you don't listen to this and think country music, but there is something about what they did
an element of
that like had to have been a huge influence on Americana.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And now you said it there, the side door.
Yeah.
You said it.
Exactly.
Side door in country music.
Yeah, songs like Androgynous and 16 Blue and some of these songs. And certainly as the years went on and they got more sort of acoustic based and all that sort of thing, there's a lot of that.
It's great.
They were probably pulling that from the Stones or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if country music was an influence on them or not, but they certainly had an impact on it.
At that age, like they would have been, their fathers would have maybe listened to country music.
Sure.
And that would have been part of their childhood. Right?
Yeah.
That was such a big genre at that point. And that's like a kind of another through line is that like lineage of, my father listened to it and then that led me into this type of music and that's what drew me to this. And that's, I love, crossing those dots and lining those lines up. It's such a neat thing.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was little, I only lived with my dad on and off until I was about 6 or something.
Yeah.
But I do remember him listening to a lot of Bob Marley and a lot of Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
And at the time, hating it because it wasn't rock.
Right.
And then later on in life, coming to realize like, whoa, my dad actually had really good taste in music,
Yeah.
And Bob Dylan and the Beatles and Bob Marley and Stevie Wonder and all this
But when you're young,
stuff.
is it because of your father?
Yeah, I was like, that's not Kiss?
Yeah. Okay.
What is that? That ain't Kiss?
Yep. And then
Bob Marley ain't spitting blood?
Right. He's got no face paint on.
You're right, exactly.
What a joker.
Yeah. So technically, I did see all of the New York Dolls, just not on stage together.
Yeah.
So that's my calculation on that.
Welcome back to Vinyl Obsession, the podcast. We're taking a look at guitarist Chris Shiflett's top vinyl picks.
All right, next one.
Last but not least, vinyl number 5.
All right, last but not least, we have this weird Johnny Thunders 12-inch that's taken from his Copycats record. So we could just kind of pretend that this is the Copycats record. Johnny Thunders, big influence on me. I was a huge fan, huge New York Dolls fan, and then got into all his solo stuff and the Heartbreakers, and, you know, was lucky that, like, as that whole kind of rock and roll scene was happening in LA in the, you know, mid 80s or whatever, like when bands like Guns N' Roses and LA Guns and Faster Pussycat, all that stuff was kind of bubbling up. Johnny Thunders was still alive and still active, and he toured out here a couple times. I got to see him, I think, 4 times live.
Yep.
The first couple times were amazing. He had Arthur Kane and Jerry Nolan in his band, so it was like seeing 3/5 of the Dolls.
Yep.
And then
As close as you were going to get.
As close as I was going to get at that time. But then a million years later, there was the New York Dolls reunion that had Sylvain and David Johansen. And I saw that a couple times. So technically, I did see all of the New York Dolls, just not on stage together.
Yeah.
So that's my
now,
calculation on that.
His music and New York Dolls and those guys, because that's, I mean, maybe that's not what's super popular, but I would imagine in this part of the country, like it's more well known here.
Right.
From them being here. Was that what drew you to that? Because it was off of center?
What, with New York Dolls?
Yeah.
Well, so it's the timeline for me was like Hanoi Rocks. I don't know if you're familiar with Hanoi Rocks, but they put out their last record that was like starting to get traction. You know, you started seeing that pop up in like Kerrang! Magazine. They were showing those videos on MTV a little bit. Yep. And then the drummer died in that car accident with Vince Neil, and not too long after that, they broke up.
I guess that I should have known that I'd end up this way.
So for me, it kind of started with Hanoi Rocks, and then I connected that back to, like, I already knew David Bowie, of course, but went and, you know, got some of the Ziggy era stuff, and then New York Dolls. Like, I heard the name forever, but I didn't know their music, and those records weren't really that easy to find. And this would have been like, you know, 1984 or 85, somewhere around in there. So went back and got that greatest hits, and, you know, you talk about album cover. I mean, you look at that album cover, and it was just like their hair's just big, and
it has to be good.
Makeup and boots and the whole, you know, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah. It's funny, I remember after, because my brother brought home Two Steps from the Moon by Hanoi Rocks, and I was like sold, you know, and it just felt like this kind of left turn. And I went to my favorite record store. There was a record store called Rock Pile up in Santa Barbara, and I went in there and I just said to the guy behind the counter, this guy Rob Antonini, I go, what do you have that's glam rock? And he pulls out Diamond Dogs by David Bowie and this Red Cross record, Teen Babes from Monsanto. He goes, here you go. I was like, great. Paid him the, you know, $12 or whatever, went home. Was like, wow. And just kind of through that, you know, like I said, New York Dolls, then any Johnny Thunders record you could get your hand on, you know, and it was weird ones. It was just whatever they had. It was live at the Lyceum Ballroom, and it was, you know, Hurt Me, his acoustic record, and some of those ones.
Well, 5 to 1, baby, I want to five. You take yours, baby, I take mine. Let it roll.
And then he had a new record out right around that time called Kiss Ross Ross. So, yeah, Johnny Thunders, so cool. I'll never forget. At the first time I saw him was at this little pool hall in Santa Barbara, and we're sitting there watching. I think DI was opening, and they're on stage, and me and my friends are in the crowd, and Johnny Thunders walks in the front door, and he was like, my memory of it was he was not a whole lot taller than we were at that age. Yeah. I'm not tall now as a full-grown adult, so you can do the math on that. And his hair was like, well, boom! He had like that haircut, you know, like the super duper Al Pacino, you know, the '80s thing, and like a cool suit. He just walked in. He just looked like he was just like, you know, larger than life.
Drawn to him.
Yes.
Instantly, as soon as he walked in.
We're all like, whoa, no way, that's Johnny Thunders. And then he came out and just destroyed.
Now, how many people are at that show?
Oh God, I mean, it's a pool hall. It was. If there was 300 people, I'd be surprised. You know what I mean? It seemed full at the time, but you know, it's probably not a very big room. It's now an Urban Outfitters, so that tells you all you need to know about life.
Man, this is a great list. I could sit here and talk to you forever about music. Is there anything you got coming up you want to plug, you want to talk about and get out there?
Well, I just put out a record called Lost at Sea a couple months ago. So been doing a bunch of shows, kind of slotting in some solo shows when it works around my Foo Fighter tour schedule, which is also super duper busy right now. Got a whole, year or whatever of touring coming up, and then I've been working on this guitar show called Shred with Shifty. So dropping episodes from that.
Okay.
We've got like Mike Campbell coming up, Ace Frehley, bunch of great stuff on that, and then Bottle Rock this year. Be exciting, and
awesome.
Yeah, that's it. Just kind of keep moving.
Dude, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, that's been Vinyl Obsession, the podcast. I'm Eric Young. That's Chris Shiflett. He's obsessed. I'm obsessed. And now you're obsessed too.